Guys, before the video starts, if you enjoy this kind of content, please be sure to like the video and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. And of course, please be sure to leave some comments down below in terms of what videos you would like to see from me in the future here on the Berdines Jewelry channel. Thanks for your support. When we take a look at the watch market landscape and how it's evolved over the last 5 years, maybe the brand that has been impacted the most just in terms of overall price turbulence has been Audemars Piguet. Now, it's nothing short of spectacular, the incredible price increases that Audemars Piguet experienced on the pre-owned market over, of course, the last 5 years or so. This was a brand that pretty much you can get every single watch new at retail at a discount, a significant discount at that, until they really launched the boutique only model, which kind of changed their strides and their future and really helped evolve the brand into what we see today. Now, of course, with the help of celebrities and endorsements from a number of people such as athletes and other famous figures, as well, of course, the rise of social media, which I think played the biggest role, the popularity of AP watches really came about and was extremely strong over the last 5 years and came to a level where essentially every single watch was selling over retail, or nearly every single watch. Now, it's crazy to think about, especially considering the market that we're in today, where almost every single watch now sells under retail from AP. I know it's crazy to think about, but that is unfortunately the case. Now, of course, with that meteoric rise in price came a sting of arrogance with the brand at Audemars Piguet, specifically when it came to their retail authorized sales locations, where they would essentially spurn at and turn away a number of wealthy customers who essentially just became turned off with the brand. Now, what we see today is a lot of collectors actually moving away from AP, looking at, for example, Patek Philippe, Rolex, or even transitioning out of your big name retail kind of brands and going towards maybe your independents. This is a trend that has certainly evolved over time, and I think the fact that they turned away so many enthusiastic collectors who were not only passionate about the brand, but about their watches and owning their watches really helped ultimately change the course of their pricing as we see today. Now, of course, now in 2024, as we're approaching the end of it, AP has been without question the most affected on the secondary market in terms of secondary market values. When you take, for example, a watch like a 15500 ST, just a simple stainless steel Royal Oak 3-hand with a date, this was a watch that traded at the peak of the market as high as $105,000. And I know there was a realized sale price as high as $107,000, which is crazy to think about considering that watch today is worth roughly in the $40,000 to $45,000 range, pending year, condition, and contents. Now we're talking an over 50% decline of that wristwatch. If you look across the board in a lot of their popular, very hyped up models, you can see a lot of the same trends. Take, for example, another stainless steel time-only model, like a 15202 ST, for example. This was a watch that at the peak of the market was trading over $100,000 and now can be had around $50,000. It's crazy to think about. Again, another 50% drop. And you see the same go with their ceramics and all these other different models. The current retail situation with AP really hasn't changed, where you're just not walking in and getting a stainless steel Royal Oak at retail. And it's come to the point where now a 15500 ST and, for example, the gray or the silver dial, which are the most attainable to get at an authorized dealer of AP, have essentially become retail plus tax watches on the secondary market. Now, there's a watch that retails for slightly under $30,000. So with tax, you're going to be paying slightly over around $31,000. Again, depending on where you are located and, of course, what your tax percentage is. Now, there's a watch that sells on the secondary market for around $33,000 to $35,000, pending year, condition, and contents. But if you were to go and resell that watch, you would essentially be getting what you paid, if not a little bit less, if the watch is pre-owned. If the watch is brand new, you'll probably get what you paid out of it. And so it's crazy to think about a watch you're probably going to wait 6 to 8 months to get it, if you're even able to get it, potentially even up to 12 months to establish a retail connection, and even potentially have to establish purchase history with the brand, buying, for example, something like a code 1159 or an offshore diver or something of the sort to establish that purchase history. Essentially, you're going to get a stainless steel Royal Oak that you can sell for what you paid for brand new out the door. And that's where I come to really say that AP is no longer really worth it at retail. To me, what is the point of waiting 6 to 8 months plus for a watch that ultimately is trading on the secondary market for not that big of a premium anymore, and you have to deal with potentially some bad apples and bad actors in the industry where you're pretty much having a negative sales experience and you're not able to get the stuff that you want without having established a purchase history of watches that you ultimately don't want. To me, that's straight up blackmail. Buying watches that ultimately you don't want in order to get another is not an effective retail strategy, and I think it certainly has impacted AP pricing on the secondary market. Now, these are two watches that I've sold recently. One is a John Mayer AP, one is an AP Offshore 26420 SO, the taupe, which is probably one of the most popular offshore. Now, these are two completely different in terms of the price scale of AP. This is a watch that retails, I believe, around the $40,000 price point. Maybe it's even the mid 40s, and now resells on the secondary market for around $35,000. Again, probably the most popular offshore in stainless steel, or kind of a steel metal, non-precious metal rather. Now, these are watches that, again, you're not going to walk into AP and just get it within 2 or 3 months. And again, you're probably going to have to establish some kind of purchase history by buying a code 1159 or buying an offshore diver. Again, watches that all sell under retail. If we're looking at just, for example, the code 1159 line, for the most part, almost all code 1159s trade at least at a 40% discount wholesale, which is just, again, crazy to think about. If we're looking at, for example, offshore divers, we're talking about potentially a 30% discount depending on the color that you're getting. Most offshore divers are being bought around the $20,000 price point and being resold around the $23,000 to $25,000 price point. Again, totally depending on the color scheme. Again, there's a watch that you're not walking into AP and just getting straight off the waitlist, and yet you're still losing almost $10,000 from the original retail price. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum where, of course, there are still a number of Audemars Piguet watches which sell dramatically over retail. Take, for example, this one, which I just recently sold. It's a John Mayer AP, which I just sold for $305,000. Now, when you consider that this is a wristwatch that actually sells for $180,000, that's a pretty reasonable markup considering this is only a 200-piece limited edition. Reasonable in a relative term. This is for a brand that, like AP, for example, that ultimately only makes about 50,000 watches a year, has an extremely wealthy and affluent client base, and at the end of the day, has a number of people who would be more than happy to purchase this new at retail. And even in most cases, pay a significant premium over retail to obtain this wristwatch. Now think about the kind of purchase history you would need to ultimately get this watch at retail. This is a watch that is 200-piece limited edition. Within the actual Rolodex of AP customers, you would have to qualify as one of their top 200 customers in theory to even be considered for this wristwatch. I would say probably even within their top 500 customers. But beyond that, unless you have a purchase history of at least $500,000 to probably $1 million, you're not even going to get on the wait list for a timepiece like this. This is just the consideration. Think about this. You're going to have spent over $500,000 to $1 million with AP and not even get the timepiece that you ultimately want. So the $120,000 premium you're paying for this on the secondary market doesn't look that bad, considering you're potentially losing 20 to 30% of essentially the value of your AP portfolio of watches, and you're still not even going to get considered for something like this, where you're paying $120,000 premium on the secondary market. Is it really worth creating that retail relationship with AP? For me personally, the pay-for-play schemes, the blackmail, I don't really have time for that. And again, I think that the AP trajectory ultimately is not looking very healthy if you look at the secondary watch market. Not only have the prices come down the most of any other watch brand in the industry, period, we're also talking about a lot of inventory out there on the market. And AP is increasing their production to now 50,000 watches per year. Just take, for example, the number of AP watches currently listed on Chrono24. As of this video, there's 15,000 total listings of AP watches for a brand that only makes 50,000 watches a year. That's roughly 30% of their production. Now compare that, for example, to Rolex, which has arguably the strongest resale of any brand, and they only have about 103,000 listings, again, at the time of making this video, which is only 10% of their production, assuming they make 1 million watches a year. Now, of course, in these listings, there's no discrepancy between new watches and old watches, right? It's just the total listings altogether. And again, the fact that they're all online for people to see and essentially critique is crazy to think about for a brand that's supposed to be so exclusive and so difficult to get, especially new at retail. It's not to say that AP doesn't make amazing watches. I don't want people to confuse this as a critique for the actual watchmaking of AP. I think AP makes some of the most stunning wristwatches of the entire watch industry. And I will say this, I know from personal experience, having owned a 15202 ST, the jumbo extra thin at 39 millimeters, It's not only, I think, the best sports watch ever made, I think it has the best bracelet, the nicest looking kind of sports watch aesthetic and silhouette. And it is that kind of blank canvas that I think probably is the best in the industry. Just considering how wide of a production line AP was able to expand the Royal Oak, right? Even the Code 1159, the offshore divers, they all kind of draw inspiration from, of course, the Royal Oak. And the watchmaking itself, technically speaking, is amazing, right? Renault and Papi being a part of AP now, and of course, their focus on ultra complications, going back to kind of the historical watchmaking, even with their remaster line, which I hope that they expand on. AP makes some phenomenal watches, but I think the fact that they engage in this pay-for-play blackmail scheme has turned off a lot of collectors, and you see it affected on the secondary watch market. So again, in my personal opinion, I just don't see the value in playing the AD games, playing the boutique games with AP to ultimately get a watch at retail that, maybe isn't even what you want in the first place, or you'll have to wait a significant amount of time essentially begging for a wristwatch. I've never been a fan of that. I've never done that myself personally. So maybe there are people out there who enjoy the chase like that. But for me personally, I just don't get it, and I never will. Just my personal opinion, but I'd love your feedback down in the comments below. Please be sure to like this video as always if you enjoyed this, and subscribe for more content like this in the future. I always enjoy getting your feedback, so please do let me know what you think down in the comments below and what videos you'd like to see from me in the future. As always, guys, I'll see you in the next one.